I like that. That is perfect, and I think that's a great description of what payments are across across the spectrum. How many payments geeks are in the room? Okay, so me, and I'm glad you're here too. I'm going to try and take a little different tack to this and just explain why this makes such a huge difference to you. Payments have always been relatively complex. But they've always been seen really as an operational cost, and the complexity that has been growing over the last 5 years has just kind of blown all of that out of the water. It becomes just really difficult to understand, hard to figure out, and so the path of least resistance is oftentimes just to go one direction, pay the price, and then forget about it. That's probably not something your finance team likes, and it definitely isn't something from a user experience that works out really well. And so one of the things that we've done is looked at that whole experience and said, what can we do to turn taking payments from just a cost of doing business to a strategic advantage? And that's what CellPoint Digital is all about. So we are a payment orchestration provider. What is that, you ask? So payment orchestration is really the idea that we want to optimize your payment flows, optimize what transactions you take, how you route them, who you work with, and how we present those opportunities or those payment choices to your customers to maximize their user experience, reduce your operating cost, and streamline your back-end operations. We do that. We are effectively a technology layer that sits between you, the organization that's accepting a payment, and your payment processor. We're processor agnostic, so we don't require you to change the processors that you work with. So we sit between you and Adyen or WorldPay or WeChat Pay, whoever that might be. And then we optimize the routing that occurs at that level. So we do that in a variety of ways. The first is that we have an intelligent routing engine that enables us to look at whatever it is you want to accomplish. Do you want the least cost routing for those transactions? We can help you do that. If you have transactions that fail on one processor, we can help you move them to another processor and make sure you get an authorization. That's really critical because you think about just how much time you've spent getting that customer to the point where they're ready to say, yes, I want to book. And to have that experience go bad in some way, for them to not see the kind of payment that they want to use, or to have a failure that happens where that transaction can't be converted, that's an incredibly expensive transaction. So we want to make sure that that happens as well. And we optimize that payments flow. In many cases, even very large merchants are still using a single payment processor for all of their operations, or they're using one in one part of the world and another in a different area. We think there's a better way to do that, and it's layering local payment providers, local payment types, and global payment providers to make sure that you have options in terms of how you route those transactions. We have a big ecosystem. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a minute, but really what that helps you do is scale faster. Make sure that you can take the kind of payments that you want to take, the payment types you want to take, and really improve that user experience for the customer. And then we also work on reducing your back office complexity, and I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. We're obviously asking people to do something a little bit different, not a lot, but putting this in place is a relatively straightforward thing from an operational perspective, but it definitely has results. Now, this is a situation where your experiences may vary, certainly, but this is just an example and a not unrepresentative one of an impact that we've had. An 11% increase in transaction approvals. So 11% of the time when somebody's getting a no, we're helping them get a yes. A 30% reduction in operating costs, the overall cost of accepting a payment, and then a 75% faster time to market in terms of being able to add new opportunities to future-proof your payments ecosystem. One example, when I say operating cost, one example of that is what we can do to make sure that all of your sales channels, web, mobile, chatbot, call center, all can work in a unified way so that the exact same payment experience that somebody has on your website is the same as it is on your mobile site as well. That's a huge thing, both in terms of making sure that, again, it's a better user experience. One of our customers, though, also was operating 43 different websites or 43 different payment pages. And they were doing that because in different countries, there were different payment types they needed to support. There were different requirements. We were able to consolidate that down to a single one. So the operational cost reduction from that alone was a pretty significant thing for them. And then when we think about ecosystem, again, we're processor agnostic or payment type agnostic. Today in our ecosystem, we have 168 different alternative or local payment methods, 28 different card schemes, and 221 processors. So we enable you to really work with whoever you want to work from a processor perspective, to take the payment types that your customers really want and that you probably want because they offer you some commercial advantages as well. We've been around for a while, which is great. We're continuing to innovate, but one of the things that we've done is we have really focused on working with operationally complex companies. We come out of the airline space. We've been in that space for some time with companies like Virgin Atlantic, with Southwest, with Cebu, with Avianca, companies that have very complex operating systems. But within that, then we've also started to work with companies, hotel companies. So Radisson, we've just announced we're in full-on implementation with them. And with some of our airlines, we're also working with their vacations properties and holidays programs, which has some very similar experiences to what hotel brands are having to deal with as well. So that's really the idea here. We help you optimize your payments flow, reduce your operating cost, and drive more transactions with a better user experience than any other way you're going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Just time for a couple very quick questions. I think Ellen had one to begin with.
Yep. So we briefly talked about China and the form of payments that they prefer. Are there any geographic regions where payment orchestration makes more sense than others?
You know, I think that even in the general rule of thumb, the more complex the payment types and the operating kind of structure that's there, the more important payment orchestration is. So even, say Latin America, where you've got a lot of very unique payment types and ways of doing business. Asia is certainly one of those as well. But even when you look at North America or Europe, where things tend to be a little bit more straightforward, there are terrific use cases for using multiple acquirers so that you can optimize your auth rate, but also help you create some leverage one against another.
And second very quick question, is it more applicable to the larger chains that are more global in nature, or is there equal applicability for a regional chain that might have customers from international destinations?
Yeah, I think anytime you're accepting global payments, this is an application that you really want to look at. Certainly the larger brands are going to have, particularly as they start to centralize e-commerce, there's some obvious opportunities there. But even for a regional brand that's just looking to kind of optimize what they're doing today, there are great opportunities.
Thank you very much.